Hey, this is Tiqqle, and in this video we're going to go over the Enhancement Shaman Guide for the Mage Tower in 9.1.5. This was probably the second hardest Shaman Mage Tower, Elemental Shaman being the easiest, link down below for that guide. This is the Enhanced Shaman one, which definitely has to, you kind of need a lot of information to go into this one to feel really confident. But this one does benefit from a lot of trinkets and a lot of ways to min-max your character that will make it so much easier because it is a DPS check actually, but it's also a strategy check. So let's go ahead and jump into it. This is the build I was using. These are the talents that I was using. A lot of people said Ascendance was better. I personally liked Elemental Spirits more. Having the Wolves up more often, I really like that. And the Wolves I feel like actually do a lot of damage. You'll see the damage breakdown shortly here. Now, otherwise, everything else here is pretty standard. You are using only Blast. Now, you might say, why? Well, it actually does a lot of damage. Again, see the breakdown. But you won't get the benefit of Doom Winds. So you are going to go LA Blast because Wind Fury doesn't really do as much. Now, in terms of gear, a few tips, much more important than the LA Shaman one. You want to use your Heart of Azeroth because that has a ton of secondary stats. Remember, it all scales down to eye level 50, and if you don't have haste, it feels like hot garbage, especially for Enhancement Shaman. Having those Maelstrom weapon stacks build up is critical for this to be smooth for you. Now, Heart of Azeroth will give you a lot of stats, as well as your Cloak that's legendary from last X-Pack if you have it. Now, in terms of weapons, I use these, trying to get some bleed effects or some overtime damage, but these actually didn't do anything, so that was sad. Some things do a lot, some things do a little. You might want to check Wowhead for the best, weapons, trinkets, and tricky things. Now, I really recommend getting one of these trinkets, either the Humming Black Dragon Scale or the other one from BFA, which was down here. I had it just a second ago. Basically, my bags are such a mess. Here it is. Stacking Haste. You want to get that Stacking Haste. It'll make Enhancement Shaman feel so much better in the Mage Tower. Now, alternatively, you could go for the pocket-sized computation device, where if you do the channeling here, it does it actually does a pretty good amount of damage, but I would recommend no. It's more important that you get Maelstrom weapon stacks flowing, which means haste, 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 haste. That means that your stat priority, haste, crit, verse, then mastery. So that's what you want to do. Alternatively, if there's trinkets like this one, where it can actually do damage, anything that can add a dot to the targets for building up damage is very important. You also have to be a little bit careful because you don't want to break your CC. So that's that. Let's go ahead and jump into the Mage Tower. Also, in this one, it is a damage check. Bring your flask, bring haste food, bring an augment rune, bring whatever it is. Make sure your weapons are enchanted. Make sure you drop Wind Fury. But let's go ahead and jump into the Mage Tower. And I'm going to explain the bosses first, quickly, and then we'll get into my playthrough where we decimate that puppy. All right, this is simply a screenshot of the 3 bosses. I want to let you know what you're supposed to do for each one of them because it's overwhelming otherwise. Okay, so I'm going to go through them one at a time from easiest to hardest. Okay, number 1, the Jarl over here on the left side. He does 3 things. 1, he'll start chucking axes out that will just do damage to you. You don't really have to worry about it too much. Number 2, he will start charging you when he gets a big buff and his hands will start glowing. You do want to kite him ideally. You can tank that damage and heal it, but I recommend you kite him until the last phase when things get really scary. And then the last thing he does is a Blade Storm, which puts a big wind thing down, and he starts to spin and does a ton of damage. You want to save your Capstun Totem for that. You don't have to save it as much as you just want to make sure it's up when that's happening. It's critical to stop that. If you don't have your stun up, which often I did not, I just ran out of range and you just don't take damage. Now, those are minor things. This guy is a minor player when it comes to these other effects. He doesn't have anything that will instantly wipe you, and those things I just told you about, you just need to be in mind. Now, Sunder does not break his Blade Storm, by the way, just so you know. Next, let's go over to the right side, Rune Seer, whatever. This person, you can spam interrupt them to reduce damage. It's good. There'll be a cast all the time. This individual basically is a caster, so you might think that they just stand there and cast and you have to interrupt them for them to move. But you can actually drag them around the room by staying within melee range. You just go in and out of melee range and they will start moving, even while they're casting. It's kind of wonky, but yeah. So with this Rune Seer, there's only 2 things you need to worry about. Number 1, just general casting, so you just interrupt it. And then number two, actually there's 3 things. The second thing you need to worry about is the fact that they will summon runes on the floor in the center of the room. It'll be around this circle icon here. There will be 1, 2, 3, and they're of different size, and they will shrink over time. And once they totally shrink, they will kill you. It's a one-shot mechanic. You need to look at all 3 of them, see how far away from you they are, and make sure you go to the smallest one first, because there's usually one that's fairly small. You run over it, and that will absorb it, and then you run all to each of them. And I'll show you the mechanics in gameplay quickly in a second, but that's the thing. So this is puts the runes down. You have to soak them each. It'll happen in waves of 2, right? So you'll get this person puts down runes, you soak them, then 5 seconds later, happens again, you soak them, you're good to go. The last thing they will do is they will put a shield on themselves, and that will absorb actually a lot of damage. So you have to DPS through that shield and then interrupt them. Once you interrupt, then they will continue to cast on you. But this is the mechanic that gets very challenging at the end of the encounter at, I think, about 20% health. They use a shout, and they all start doing their abilities more often. So that's when you want to pop Bloodlust. That's when you need to start burning the crap out of those shields. Now, lastly, the one in the middle. One of the scariest one. Because they do a few things. Number one, I can't even see the name right now, but the captain here, they do 3 things as well. Number one, they'll throw a spear at you, which puts a puddle of fel on the ground. Don't stand in it. Easy enough. Number 2, they will do a cast, and this is the most important thing, the scariest thing that will wipe you most often. They will do a cast, and it will say, and they also have voice lines. It'll say, "Power of my father's stuff." And it will do a cast, and at the end of the cast, they will start pulsing a ton of damage. You need to hex that target only at that time. You don't need to hex them in general. You only hex that boss when they start to do that cast. It's the most important thing you need to do. Even if the shield is up, doesn't matter. Even if the blade storm's going, doesn't matter. Make sure that you cast hex on them. You can set focus target if you need to, whatever you need to do. Make sure hex that whenever they do that cast. That means you can't cleave them. And then lastly, so that's a wipe mechanic. Lastly, the other thing they do is summon Valkyries. She'll say, "I summon army, I own army of things," whatever. You'll get the voice lines when we get into it. But that will summon a wall of Valkyries on one side of the room. So you always have to be looking around for them. Summons a wall of Valkyries, and there will be a gap. And you need to line yourself up with that gap because they will quickly charge across the room, and you can't be hit by them, or it'll almost always one-shot you. So those are other one-shot mechanics. So that's what the 3 bosses do. And I told you what to do in each of the situations. So now let's go ahead and get into it and go through the playthrough. All right, here we go. Now off the bat, again, you want to be popping your cooldowns pretty aggressively, especially on the pull here. You'll get the cadence and the order of things. The order of things pretty much happen exactly the same every time. Now, as an enhancement shaman, you can use Crash Lightning to start cleaving. And I recommend you do while you can. You can't do it the whole fight. You usually can only cleave the Rune Seer and the Jarl because the other person, you want to make sure that Sigrun here, you want to make sure that they're always not dotted because you have to hex them and not die. They have to sit the entire hex, by the way. You must leave them hexed. They do share a health pool, and you do have to kill the Jarl and the Rune Seer here. Now anyway, so I'm cleaving them, I'm getting them going, and now I'm starting to kite around the room. You can see the Jarl's hands are glowing. That means I know he's going to start doing some damage. I drop a Earthbind Totem to slow him down, as well as Cap Stuns to interrupt him. Now the next thing I know that's happening is the runes. Here are the runes. I go from smallest to largest. Now again, like, great. Like, you know, I soak the runes, good to go. I'm going to pick up that. There will be gold orbs that drop in the room. They will heal you. Okay, here, so you want to just pick them up sometimes whenever you need to. Now again, I'm kiting them around. They generally don't do that much damage. You have to be calm. Now that's where, okay, there's that big AoE pulse. Sigrun did the big AoE pulse. I got hit, took me down 30%. Whenever that happens, again, that's when I need to hex. You can tell there's so much stuff happening, I'm having trouble keeping up with it, but that's basically the dealio. Now, in general, I'm always on top of the Rune Seer, and I'm interrupting them because the Jarl will walk up. Otherwise, I am using, again, Crash Lightning. I am using my cleaves with Chain Lightning when I can, as well as keeping them max Flame Shocked. Flame Shocked the ones that aren't in CC. So now here, I know the Banshees are coming up soon, but not yet. Okay, here's Ancestral Knowledge. This is the shield on the Rune Seer. I have to DPS through this. It's not a big deal at this point, so we get it done pretty easily. Now, it might look like, oh, Tiqqle, things are going pretty well. Well, they are. They are. Now, okay, here's several Valkyries. See how they're at the edge of the room? There is a gap. I shoot the gap. That's it. You've seen every part of this boss fight. That's just what you have to manage. Except for the Blade Storm. You'll see that here next. But Sigrun here, and what happens with some of the bosses is they'll do their special ability and then they'll stand there. Now here's Blade Storm. You can see it's actually starting to chunk me, but I had my stun totem good to go. And that's basically it. You're going to see me cleaving them now because I know there's no other mechanic that I have to be scared about. Here are the runes. I go smallest to biggest. Again, I can use any heals that I want to. As I'm running, I'll refresh my Earth Shield. I'll drop Healing Tide or Healing Stream. Now, again, I got to go to the different runes. I use my sprint to make sure I tag them all. And I'm not panicking. Now, I know that the next thing that's going to happen is Sigrun is going to start to use the shout that will basically do that big pulsing damage. Again, that's the #1 thing to do. Okay, there's the shield. So I have to DPS the shield. And there's Valks at the same time. I make sure I line up. I don't get one shot. And now I'm back to DPSing the shield. Again, I'm not really too worried. And I'm kind of just pumping and pumping and pumping. Now, I know you'll kind of get the cadence. Like, I know, like Sigrun, I know that she's going to do her cast soon. So I'm getting ready for it. Again, like I said, that's the #1 thing you must look out for. I'm actually doing a pretty good amount of damage here at 850. So there's the Valks again. I'm cleaving. I'm just cleaving. Then they're not doing much damage, honestly. It's like not that scary once you kind of know what you're getting into. So that's the biggest thing I recommend. Start to get some pulses. Here are the runes, and the Jarl is buffed. Jarl here, he is now buffed. I don't want to take damage, but I am a little bit, so I wall. And now the ruins are out again, so I got to be careful of shooting the gap here. And there it is. So now, again, I need to stack them up if I can. And I need to be a little careful. Now here, one more time of the runes. And now I know Sigrun's going to do her shout thing. Here it comes very soon. There it is. The blood of my father. I'm going to hex even though I was taking the Blade Storm. That's the #1 most important thing. I did Health Stone. That's also a very important thing that you can be using here. But I haven't Bloodlusted yet. I'm saving Bloodlust. And I'm saving Bloodlust because of the last effect that you're going to see happen pretty soon. But you can see me switching targets pretty often to reapply Flame Shock and the like. But in general, like, things look pretty under control. Well, they're about to change. There it is. Empowers herself and others. There's Blade Storm. I don't have my stun. I'm starting to be like, oh no. I heal myself. I try to get out of there. We're feeling pretty good. We're feeling pretty good. Now, again, we do know the shields are going to be coming out from the runes here. And in general, I want to keep them basically centered around the middle of the room. It is usually the safest spot. Now, even though Sigrun is in a hex, they can still spawn the Banshees to come across the world here. Now, again, the shield's up. I got to be pumping that shield, using everything that I got on it. I still haven't even Bloodlusted yet. I don't know what's wrong with me. But I'm just pumping and pumping and pumping. I interrupt. Now the Valks. I'm trying to line it up. We're good. We're good. Again, another one. Now, blood of my father. We got to interrupt that immediately. I took a pulse, but we're okay. Now here, we have the ancestral knowledge. We have to DPS that down. This is, I think this one was pretty close, or maybe it's the next one. But they start to do these things over and over and over and faster and faster and faster. And these gold orbs in the middle are definitely starting to become important. You can see I'm refreshing my Earth Shield, so that is going well. I'm trying to kill this Jarl because one less boss will mean one less set of mechanics that I have to deal with. All right, there's the shield up again, and the Jarl's buffed. I'm getting nervous. There's also Banshees. I'm healing myself. I'm getting nervous. I'm probably gonna. Did I Earth Ally? Earth Ally's already out, actually. Earth Ally's actually not doing a whole lot to taunt these two off me. But we're very, very close, and I have to DPS this shield. I get it just at the end. That shield is tough at the end, especially as you're kind of like, oh, mechanics, oh, mechanics. And here's one more shield. And the Banshees. Again, I have to do one at a time. I get over there. And I have to hex at the same time. Everything's overlapping, but remember, you need to prioritize. Number one, don't get hit by the Banshees. Number two, make sure that Sigrun is not allowed to get that cast off to make them pulse. Otherwise, DPS that shield down. That's about it. Runes are going to come up pretty soon, so I'm just pumping. Another shield. These shields are so annoying, to be honest. And it's really a game of attrition, but there we go. There we go. And that's all it takes. So that's about it. Now, I will say, the number one thing, get those haste trinkets. Your haste feels like poop. It feels like awful. It feels awful. But those are the tricks and tips I have for you. Let anyone, if you have anything else to share, put it down in the comments. It was a lot of fun learning this fight. Really fun doing it. And I hope this guide helps you get that beautiful transmog. And with that being said, we'll see you guys in the next one. Check later for the rest of Shaman 1 and any other Mage Tower guides that we put together. Let me know what else you want to know, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care, everybody. Bye now.